Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for being here. And in this video, we're going to have a look at how we attract, and even if we're manifesting or if we don't believe in manifesting, how we actually draw things into our reality. So from my own perspective, it comes down to our habits. And the reason why I say this is because if we look at our habits of thought, actions, behaviors, whatever kind of thing that we incorporate into our daily lives, we look into our physical world, we will know that anything that we are seeing reflected back to us has come from a consistent or persistent habit of thought or actions or behaviors. So for instance, when we look to things that are maybe undesirable, let's say for instance we have caught ourselves into an undesirable reality, into a kind of a little bit of a mess that we really didn't intend to do. A lot of the time it will come down to the fact that we were actually engaging in some sort of kind of self-destructive habit that may have went unconscious. And when I say unconscious, it is because that as we live through our lives, and if we don't become aware of what we consistently tell ourselves in our habits or even in our behaviors and our actions, it just kind of brings into this belief into our subconscious mind that this is the truth for us. So that is why we know that when we look to things of manifesting or creating, is that we can change it around. We can change the dynamic. So even if people are skeptical and they don't believe in law of attraction or things like that, you can look at the science behind it, and the science behind it will be around the physics. If we look to Albert Einstein, he determined as well that it's about matching your frequency to the reality that you want, that it is actually physics, it's not anything else, it's actually the truth. So when we're attracting things, it's becoming aware of the conscious thoughts that we are consistently thinking. It doesn't mean that we don't have negative thoughts, because we're human. It's just part of the way that we engage in our life, and there is a duality. So just because there is a positive, it doesn't mean that there isn't a negative as well too, because otherwise how would we know how to live? How would we know about things? How would we know what we like? How would we know what we dislike if there wasn't an opposite in the world, in the reality, in the universe? And so when we're looking at something that we want to create that is different from what we have experienced before, it does come down to our habits. So how we start to create these new habits will come in little tiny forms. So for me, I know that when I want to start, let's say for instance, you're looking at yourself and you want to kind of grow a little bit more in maybe your behaviors or certain things that you do, you become conscious of the habits that you have. So this could be something like maybe you're at work, you're doing something that you always do, but for some reason there is something in front of you that could be done as well too. Maybe you were leaving it because it was for somebody else and you were kind of getting frustrated that they weren't doing it. But in those moments, if you decide, okay, I will just do this little task right here, you are building that kind of cell, this new neurons in your brain, that your habits are actually contributing to you learning on and growing into this kind of persona that you actually desire. So for instance, if we look at it from the perspective that whatever is frustrating in, let's say we'll use the example of work again, and whatever is frustrating to you, let's say you don't get your head around the idea about jobs that could be done that are not being done, not that you have to take on extra, but if you engage in that frustration, it's kind of perpetuating the belief, not only in yourself, but it starts to create that kind of habit and behavior coming from you as well too. And I know that's kind of like a paradox, but it is simply true. Like who we are is actually what we are going to attract. So if you just kind of say to yourself, right, well, today I am going to actually decide that I don't want to be frustrated about these certain things, so I'm just going to do these little things myself. I'm not going to think about it, just going to do them. Obviously if you have the time. If you don't have the time, then these are things that maybe you are going to leave. But again, if you don't have the time, you won't be as frustrated by it because you won't be noticing it because you don't have the time, if that makes sense. So if you notice these things and they are frustrating you, all we have to do in those moments is to take a minute and say, right, I'm just going to take it on and do it myself. And over time, when you start engaging in these kind of habits, it's not that you're asking for more, maybe at work or anything like that. But because you've engaged in this habit, it does not go unnoticed. And over time, things start to attract into your life that will give you more. So maybe your boss notices that you have started doing these little things, and they come to you and they offer you a promotion, or they say that they have noticed that your work ethic is really good and they'd like you to lead maybe somebody else, and maybe they offer you a different position. And so there's all of these kind of things that can come along. It's like when we look at the universe and it says, the more that you give, the more you receive, because you're becoming that kind of person, if that makes sense. Now, I know that I've kind of gone on a little tangent here, so I hope that it's making sense. And I think I actually will leave this video here, but I will talk a bit about it more in depth in other videos. But I just wanted to introduce the idea of doing things just a little bit more to create that neuron in your brain that this is who you are. This is the type of person you are. And so because you are this type of person, you start to attract it into your reality. Now, I do want to talk about when it comes to relationships and boundaries and things like that. Once you know yourself and you are really clear on who you are, and you're really clear on your boundaries and all of those kind of things, doing little extra things to build these habits, you're not doing it for the other person, you're not doing it for the relationship, you're doing it for yourself so that you can grow these new neurons and new cells in your brain. And you can become this person. It's kind of like building your own self, developing your own worth and value as well too. Because when we look at value, we know that the more that we are, the more that we do actually builds the value of who we are as well too. It's like if you study more, you have more value, and maybe you're getting certificates and things like that. You become more skillful, and then you become more valuable to the workforce. So everything that we do for ourselves to be more valuable does not mean that we have to do things in order to hold on to a relationship, in order to allow people to walk over boundaries. That's not the kind of concept that I want to get across, because it's important to find the right balance when you are doing a little bit extra. It's not about doing it to get, it's doing it to evolve, if that makes sense. Because when you do it in this way, that is the kind of that's the development and the evolution of yourself that you're transfiguring into as well too. So I am going to leave that video there, but of course, if you have any questions about this, you can comment down below. Email me at any time as well too. I am going to be posting more videos. I did put a community post up to see if anyone had any ideas, and I really like the ideas that I've gotten so far, so thank you so much for that, and hopefully I will get them out now in the next couple of weeks as well too. So thank you so much for being here. Have a lovely day, and I will chat to you soon.